when you learn how to code, or when you learn a tool like Zapier, you often are building simple logic. You're saying, hey, when a call is booked, I want to put a record in a spreadsheet, and then you add on more logic. So you say, when a call is booked, put a record in a spreadsheet, and then send a ping on Slack, or make a file, or something. It's a piecemeal logic, right? That is how you learn how to code as well. So if you learn Python, you're going to learn, like, if this valuable or this variable is true, print out some message on the terminal, or do some kind of simple logic, right? Now, when you start to learn how to code, you assume that if you just piece together these little pieces of logic, eventually you will end up with the whole system. So this is where people get this idea of, if I use Zapier and Google Sheets and ClickUp, then I can automate my business. And what happens is kind of like what happens when a kid tries to build a bridge with spaghetti and marshmallows, right? So you start with like a basic structure that seems to work, and you assume that if you keep on adding to the structure, it will eventually be this like huge thing. Now, what happens with code is the same thing that happens with spaghetti. You start to build onto it and build onto it and build onto it, and eventually, like, once you add one more piece, it collapses a little bit, like it kind of breaks. So you add one piece of like code over here and it breaks over there, and you try to modify this and it breaks over here, and you get to this perpetual state where you're like, I feel like I'm almost done. Like, I feel like I'm 90% done, and I just need to like fix this thing, and oh shoot, that broke over there, I have to fix this other thing, right? The problem is not the logic, the problem is how the logic fits into the overall structure. So you end up with spaghetti code, and we actually call this spaghetti code in engineering. The problem with spaghetti code is it feels like you're almost done the whole time, but you're never going to get there. So think about how an actual bridge is constructed. It's not out of spaghetti, but like, think of what you would actually do to make a bridge that held up like real cars, or like a real building. You would have to do a land survey, figure out what kind of material, like, is it bedrock, is it marsh, what's going on, is it a really cold area, or a really windy area, or a lot of earthquakes, right? You have to know those things to get something that actually holds more than just a little bit. Right? So if we all kind of, hopefully you understand the analogy there of like spaghetti code or spaghetti structures, how do you actually apply this to a real business, right? So like, what is the answer, and like, what did we do with our clients that grew massively in a month and actually is still there? What do we do to hold up a real structure? What do we do for a real system as well? So the first thing you do is processes. So we start with, and like when I was working in manufacturing, what we would always be provided with is a map of the entire manufacturing process. So what the client says is like, hey, like here's our process. What we do with clients today is we interview them about their process. We ask about like which tasks or which steps have to be done in a specific order, which steps, if they got super busy, could you do in this at the same time if you had extra team members, what their problems are with certain tasks or certain steps. Based on our experience as well, we sometimes ask about like, hey, do you ever have this problem? Do you have this problem? Because a lot of our clients have the same kind of problems. Okay. So the first step, and you can do this with your own business as well, is map out every single process. We like to separate these things. I can't show you the details here. This is a specific client process, but we like to also separate out context, which is what you see in gray, from improvement opportunities in yellow. So as we're going through this, there's oftentimes problems that people will identify for us, or other information that's relevant for building a system. Okay, you cannot just start building automations on top of this though. You end up with spaghetti code. So what do you do after this? The second step that we always follow is we take the many steps, the many tasks, and we group them into entities. So what is an entity? Imagine you're building a car. A car has an engine, and the same engine may be in multiple models of cars. A car also has wheels, which could have, tire and brake pad and things like that. And there's 4 wheels per car. So if you were building a manufacturing process for a car, you might say, well, here's our wheel manufacturing process, and here's our engine manufacturing process, and here's how we do the chassis or the body of the car, and this kind of engine goes in that kind of car and that kind of car, and this kind of car has 4 of these wheels, right? And that's how you would break it down. And the benefit of breaking down a lot of tasks or like a lot of steps and grouping them into entities which each have a process of their own and properties of their own is you can create what we call a single source of truth. So what that means is when you update a client record, that client record propagates to all the deliverables assigned to a client, right? Or if you have a real estate deal, it means if you update the address for the real estate deal, it could propagate to other paperwork that you have related to that deal. So you have one deal for many possible investors, or one deal for many possible offers, or one client for many deliverables. Okay? So if you just have a huge list of tasks in a Google Sheet or in ClickUp or something, you can't ever create a single source of truth, which means any kind of automation is error prone. It's kind of like the spaghetti code, right? There's one thing changes and lots of other things break. Okay? So the second step is creating a single source of truth with entities, and you can see an example here of like how we design this. And the third step is creating what we call a digital manufacturing process to allow your team to keep track of the process for each of these entities. So different database tools, different front-end tools that you can use to do this, but this is the high-level idea. This is the exact same process that we follow when I was doing manufacturing, like automation for massive, like multi-million-dollar a day processes. And the tools vary based on the size of the business, really, but the benefit of having something like this is you can have real-time KPIs. So this is an example of a real-time KPI. What you can see here is the average time spent per step, and then the trend of one specific step over time. So you can imagine, in the same way that a manufacturing process has the process, and you have the directors sitting back and looking at the trends and saying, we have a bottleneck here, let's fix this. We have a bottleneck over here, we have too many errors happening over here, let's go and intervene. You can create the same process for your business with deliverables that you have in your business. Now, every single business is different. If you want us to create a custom roadmap for yours, there's a link in the description, you can click that. But I hope you enjoyed this lesson from billion-dollar manufacturing that you can apply to your business to build better systems. If you want to see more like this, then let me know in the comments.